and welcome back to the Cracking FAANG YouTube channel. Today we're going to be solving Leetcode problem 1352, product of the last k numbers. Before we read the question prompt, just want to ask you guys to subscribe, help my channel grow, I can make more videos, and you guys can get those jobs in FAANG. Alright, let's read it. Design an algorithm that accepts a stream of integers and retrieves the product of the last k integers of the stream. Implement the product of numbers class, which will be initialized with an empty stream. It's going to have a method called add, which is going to take an integer number and appending that number to the stream. You're also going to have a getProduct method, which is going to be passed an integer k, which is going to return the product of the last k numbers in the current list. And we can always assume that the current list has at least k numbers. And the test cases will be generated such that at any time, the product of any contiguous sequence of numbers will always fit into a 32-bit integer without overflowing. Okay, now that we've read the question prompt, let's think about how we might solve this. So we read the question prompt, but now let's look at an example. So we know that we don't want to be storing the numbers directly, but we want to just be storing the product. So that way we don't have to recompute the product every single time. So in the beginning, our product is just going to be 1. Obviously, if we set it to 0, then we'd just be multiplying everything by 0, and we wouldn't get anywhere. It would just always be 0. And we're going to store all of our products in, we'll call it data. So in the beginning, we're going to get our 5. We're going to multiply it by the current product, and we're going to store that in our data, right? Then we get a 4, so this now becomes 20, and we're going to store that 20. And now we get a 2, so now it's 40, and we're going to store that 40. And on, so times 3, this becomes 120, store that, and then we get a 4, and this becomes 480, and now we have 480. Cool. So now let's look at some examples, right? So if we have k equals 1, we just want to know the product of the last k integers in the stream, right? So if k equals 1, it should just be the last integer here. So how do we get that? Right? What is the difference? How are we going to get 4? Well, we know that to get to our last product here, the 480, we had to multiply the previous product by some value, right? And that value is 4. So the way that we're going to do this is we're always going to take the last value that we have, so in this case 480, and we're going to divide it by whatever 1 minus k is in this case. So k is 1 here. So right, so this is going to be minus 2. So we're going to look at, in the array, what is the minus 2 element? So obviously the minus 2 element in Python is going to be this one because it's the second from the end. So we're going to take 480, divide by 120, and we're going to get 4. So that is the last element. Now let's erase this and look at the example of what happens when we have k equals 3, right? So that should be the product of 2, 3, 4, which we see is 2 times 3, which is 6, times 4, we expect this to be 24. So again, we're always going to take the last thing we have, so 480, and we follow the simple formula of 1 minus whatever k is, so 3. So this is going to be minus 4. So we want to look at the minus 4th element. So this is minus 1 here, this is minus 2, minus 3, minus 4. So this 20 here. So we want to do 480 divide by 20. And that will give us what? 24, right? And that is our solution. So essentially, 20, what 3 values did we have to multiply to get to 480, right? So we needed to multiply some things to get 24, right? So what do we multiply by 20 to get to the last element? So that's the reason why our formula works. So essentially, this is how we calculate it. Whatever it asks us, we want to divide the last element in our data here. So it's always going to be data of minus 1 divided by whatever data of minus 1 minus k is, right? And this value will be the element that we want to divide by in order to figure out the difference in between them of those products. And this will work for us. And we don't have to worry about, k not being a valid one because the problem stipulates that we'll always be given a valid k here, so we don't have to worry about it being invalid and getting a wrong answer. So that is how you solve the problem. Pretty straightforward, working off of how we multiplied these things as we go along. And as you can see, we don't have to recompute things. We can simply do a division which is going to save us time. So let's go to the code editor and type this up. It's really not that much code at all. We are back in the code editor. Let's write this up. So remember that we need to basically store the number of products that we've seen so far. That way we don't have to recompute them. So we're going to say self.products is going to be an empty list. We also need to keep track of the current product. So we're going to say self.product is going to be equal to 1. Now let's do the add method. So there's two cases that we need to handle for the add method. What happens when number is actually a 0 and the case when number is not a 0. So we'll do not a 0 because it's simpler. So we're going to say if num. What we want to do is we want to say self.products. So we want to multiply it by our new number. And then we want to say self.products.append this new product. Whoops, self.product, right? Simple enough. Okay, if it's 0, then obviously we don't want to be adding it to our products, because when we get product, it could be the case that the denominator actually becomes a 0 and then you have a divide by 0 error and that's not correct. So in this case, what we want to do is we actually just want to reset our products to be equal to 0. So we're going to say self.products. We're just going to reset it to be an empty list, and we want to say self.product is now going to be equal to 1. And you'll see what we do in this case when we do the get product method. So if we're asked to get product, obviously if we saw a 0, we reset all of our products. And if we're asked to find get product and we actually don't have more than k elements, then that means that somewhere we accidentally had, well, not accidentally, we basically had to get rid of our progress because we saw a 0. So in this case, we know that the previous k elements, there was somewhere a 0 in there, and that's why we're asked to find k elements, but we actually don't have k elements because we reset our products here. So we're going to say if the length of self.products is actually less than k when this was called, then we know that we saw a 0 somewhere and we actually had to reset our products. So we're going to return 0 because somewhere in those k elements there was a 0. Okay, so that's kind of handling the 0 edge case. What about the case where we have the amount of k we're given is actually equal to the length of our products? So that basically means give me the product of all of the numbers that you've seen so far. So in this case, it's super simple. So we're going to say else if k equals to the length of self.products. In this case, what we want to do is remember the product of all of the numbers that we've seen will always be stored at the last index of our products array, or it's just going to be whatever our self.product is. So we're simply going to return self.products. In this case, otherwise, we actually need to do the division. And see that we actually want to be returning an integer here. So it is possible for us to get a float number. So we want to just cast it to an integer. So we're going to say return int of whatever. Remember, the formula is always going to be self.data of whatever the last index in our value is. Or we could just use, I use self.data, sorry, self.products, the last index. And then we're always going to be dividing it by whatever self.products of -1 minus k is. And that is how you solve it. I just want to make sure that I didn't make any syntax errors. And it looks like, oh boy, where did I, -1 minus k, self.products. Oh, this should be self.product. Whoops. Okay, when we run this, that should be fine. Okay, perfect. Yeah, same variable, different. Okay, cool. So we submit that and we can see that it works. Excellent. What is the time and space complexity here? Well, obviously for the init function, all we're doing is setting up two variables. This is going to be a constant time. There's nothing here. So for adding, all we're doing, we're multiplying a number, constant time, appending to the end of a list, constant time, or just setting a variable that's constant time. So add, this is also constant time. Get product, obviously accessing the last element in an array by index, that's constant time. Same here. So all we're doing here, the entire time complexity is going to be big O of 1. At no point do we do any operation which is not big O of 1. This was the reason that we use products. We store the products instead of the numbers, because if it was just the numbers, then we would have to actually multiply them out each time, and I'm pretty sure you would get a time limit exceeded here. So that is your time complexity. what is the space complexity? Obviously, you need to store the products here. So the amount of products you store is just however many numbers happen to be in the stream. So we're going to say O of S, where S is the length of the data stream. So we don't know what that is. So we're just going to say we're going to end up storing however many numbers you give me in this data stream. So that is your time and space complexity. Big O of 1 for the time and big O of S for the space, where S is the length of the data stream. That's how you solve this question. Pretty straightforward. I think you see this pattern come up in a lot of questions. I think, product of array except self uses a very similar kind of solution to this. So this is definitely not something unique. You will probably come across this on Leetcode. So knowing that you can do this is definitely one to know. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you want to help my channel grow, please drop a sub. Click that bell button so you get notified when my videos come out. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.